Manufacturers distribute toluene diisocyanate, commonly called TDI, in a variety of packages, including rail tank cars. In this section, we will discuss the recommended procedures for unloading toluene diisocyanate from rail tank cars, including preparation for unloading, documentation, regulatory information, pre-unloading procedures, personal protective equipment, connecting procedures, transfer operations, disconnecting procedures, and preparation for return. The receiving, handling, and shipment of TDI require compliance with federal, state, and local regulations concerning hazardous materials. Make sure you know these regulations and follow them at all times. It is recommended that a comprehensive checklist be developed and followed throughout the unloading sequence. The brakes on the rail tank car must be set. The wheels properly chocked to prevent roll in either direction, and blue flags used as a warning to prevent access to the unloading area. Using derails will also provide additional access prevention. In most cases, the shipping documents and the certificate of analysis will have been sent to your company's receiving office ahead of the rail tank car delivery. All paperwork should be checked for accuracy. This would include such things as the purchase order number, and that the identity of the material being received is TDI. Review the values on the certificate of analysis to ensure that the product meets required specifications. Once all paperwork has been verified, the tank car itself must be checked. Begin by checking the hazard placards. Make sure that they are correct for the product noted on the shipping documents. The U.S. Department of Transportation, DOT, regulates the transportation of toluene diisocyanate. Although there are various regulations covering the shipment of TDI, it will be classified UN 2078 toluene diisocyanate Class 6.1, Packing Group 2. The letters RQ will be entered either before or after the description of the shipment when individual packages contain 100 pounds or more of TDI. The toxic placard with the UN marking 2078 is the required placard for shipments of this material. TDI rail cars must have the required labels or placards applied. The storage and handling of TDI at your facility may be subject to other federal, state, and local regulations. Compare the tank car number against the number identified on the shipping documents. Check the tank car to make sure the numbers on the security seals match the seal number shown on the paperwork. Also confirm that the security seals are not broken and have not been tampered with in any manner. You will need to break the seal on the valve cover hatch, remove the securement pin, and open the hatch to verify product temperature and pad pressure. Carefully remove the closure cap from the thermal well tube. If the car is equipped with a valve on the thermal well tube, carefully open the valve. Insert an appropriate thermometer into the thermal well to determine that the car is at the proper temperature for unloading. In order to avoid contact or exposure to TDI, personal protective equipment must be worn during the transfer operation. This includes appropriate impervious clothing such as a chemical protective suit, chemical-resistant gloves and boots, as well as an approved full-face air-supplied respirator. Unloading operators should always wear personal protective equipment whenever there is a chance of TDI exposure. Verify the location and operation of the nearest eye wash station and safety shower. Verify that the air inlet valve on the rail car is closed, then carefully remove the plug and install a fitting that is equipped with a pressure gauge. Ensure the air inlet valve on the adapter fitting is closed. Then carefully open the air inlet valve on the rail car to verify the pad pressure on the rail car. Once the paperwork and tank car checks are complete, the next step is to check your own equipment. If the content of the tank car is to be offloaded into a receiving tank, Make sure that the tank is the correct one for the product, and that there is enough room in the tank to hold this shipment. The unloading connection on the receiving line should be properly identified. Check the unloading hoses before making any connections to either the rail car or receiving line. It's recommended that hoses be 2-inch in diameter. They should also be color-coded and are labeled to assist in eliminating transfer errors. The hose gaskets should be free of any moisture, dirt, and grease. Inspect them carefully to ensure that there are no splits or cracks that could cause spills or leaks. Replace the gasket if necessary, and make sure you dispose of the old one properly. The quick disconnect fittings and gaskets of the hose should be in good working order so that the hose can be securely locked onto the discharge valve of the tank car and the receiving line. Because TDI reacts with moisture, it's extremely important that the hoses are dry. If there is any possibility of a problem with a hose, set the hose aside, tag it, and get another hose to complete the transfer. All these checks may seem unnecessary because the operation is routine, but taking these precautions every time will prevent product contamination and a potential overflow. Tank cars are usually unloaded with nitrogen or dry air pressure. An alternative method would be offloading using a pump while adding nitrogen or dry air to maintain a dry atmosphere within the tank car. When unloading with either of these methods, it is recommended that all discharge vapors be absorbed or scrubbed free of TDI. A closed-loop vapor exchange system using a product pump is another means for unloading TDI. Closed-loop means that no vapors escape from the system into the atmosphere, and no moisture from the atmosphere enters the system. If dry air is used for unloading, it is extremely important to check for signs of moisture. Dry air is recommended to have a dew point of -40 degrees Fahrenheit as a minimum. Begin the connection process by checking the nitrogen or dry air source. Make sure the gauge is working properly and that the hose is attached securely. Check the hose gasket for splits or cracks that could prevent a good seal. Connect the nitrogen or dry air supply hose to the fitting installed in the air inlet valve. Verify that the rail tank car discharge valve is closed and carefully remove the plug from this valve. Install the necessary adapter fitting into the discharge valve. The next step is to connect the unloading hose to the fitting installed in the rail car's discharge valve. After all connections have been properly secured and the checklist completed, the transfer operation may begin. Open the air inlet valve on the adapter fitting, and then open the valve on the nitrogen or dry air source. Next, carefully open the discharge valve on the rail car. Then, open the receiving line valve. The product should now be flowing through the unloading line. Once you have verified there are no leaks in the system, the nitrogen or dry air pressure will need to be increased to an acceptable pressure, usually between 15 to 25 psig, depending on the desired rate of unloading. The pressure should remain constant within the rail car until unloading is complete. During the unloading process, operators should stay in the area to monitor the transfer of product. A qualified person should attend the unloading operation at all times. Attend means that the person in attendance is alert and has an unobstructed view of the unloading operation during the entire process. A qualified person should be properly instructed in unloading procedures, be responsible for compliance with all applicable regulations, be familiar with the nature and properties of the material involved, be instructed in proper emergency procedures, and in the event of an emergency, have the authority and ability to immediately halt the flow of the product. Signaling systems that include surveillance equipment, such as cameras, may be used to notify people within the facility that a problem may exist so that product flow may be halted immediately. In addition, other safety precautions should be followed. No smoking or use of other tobacco products. no eating, and no drinking should be permitted during the transfer process. The amount of product being transferred should be monitored at all times. This can be accomplished using an inline flow meter, by watching the rail car weight, if there is a scale at the unloading station, or by monitoring the level rise in the storage tank. For safety reasons, it is strongly recommended that two methods of level measurement be used. Don't rely on automatic shutoff systems to stop the unloading process. Such systems are not foolproof. There is absolutely no substitute for an attentive operator. Monitor the operation to assure that the pad of nitrogen or dry air is maintained in the tank car. Once the tank car has been emptied, it must be disconnected from the system with the same care as it was connected. First, close the nitrogen or dry air inlet valve on the tank car and shut off the nitrogen or dry air source. Then close the product discharge valve on the tank car. Wait about a minute. Then, open the product discharge valve to blow the unloading hose clear to the storage tank. Be careful not to overpressurize the receiving tank during the hose clearing operation. After the hose is cleared, close the product discharge valve on the tank car and the valve on the receiving line. Then open the bleed valve to depressurize the unloading hose. Make sure you collect any excess product in a catch container that contains a neutralizing solution. Now close the bleed valve. Once this has been completed, the unloading hose should be carefully disconnected from the tank car and, if necessary, from the receiving line. A catch container should be used under the ends of the hose to capture any product drippage. The ends of the hose should be capped and plugged immediately after disconnection. Remove the fitting from the tank car discharge valve and install the closure plug. Recheck to see that the tank car is still pressurized with 5 to 10 psi-G of nitrogen or dry air. This will assure that moisture will not enter the tank car and react with the residual TDI on the return trip. Next, depressurize and carefully disconnect the dry air or nitrogen hose from the tank car's inlet valve. Remove the fitting from the tank car's nitrogen valve and install the closure plug. Finally, remove the thermometer from the thermal well, close the valve if there is one present, and install the closure cap. Check all valves to verify they are fully closed, and all closure plugs to verify they are wrench tight. Close the valve cover hatch, install the securement pin, and apply a tamper-evident seal for the return trip. The U.S. DOT requires that any spilled material or product residue must be removed from the tank car's exterior surface prior to it being offered for return shipment. Complete the checklist to ensure that the rail tank car is properly prepared for return shipment. If there are any defects that must be corrected before the car can be returned, or before the car is loaded for the next shipment, notify the supplier. Finally, remove the wheel chock, blue flag, and derail. Return the paperwork to the receiving office, and if there are no defects, notify appropriate personnel that the empty tank car is ready for return. In this section, we have discussed the recommended procedures for unloading toluene diisocyanate from rail tank cars, including preparation for unloading, documentation, regulatory information, pre-unloading procedures, personal protective equipment, connecting procedures, transfer operations, disconnecting procedures, and preparation for return. If you have any further questions or are unsure of the actions required of you, ask your supervisor or team leader, or contact the product manufacturer. For more information on the topics covered in this section, consult the following literature developed by the Center for the Polyurethanes Industry: Model Respiratory Protection Program, Equipment Guidelines for Diisocyanate Storage Tanks, TDI user guidelines for protective clothing selection, TDI transportation guidelines, working with TDI, what you should know.